When examining the ancient landscape across the globe, the oldest hunting tool is the Atlatl and dart system. In Mesoamerica, iconography shows elites and gods of power using the Atlatl in ceremonial roles and warfare duties. Although organic material technologies rarely preserve in the archaeological record, the Atlatls recovered in Mexico are elaborate and fine works of art. Some Aztec Atlatls display images of serpents which are affiliated with the underworld. During the Aztec and Spanish Wars, an Atlatl was stripped from the city of Tenochtitlan and sent back to the King of Spain. This Atlatl displays the image of Mixcoatl, who is the warrior-hunter deity in the complex Aztec belief system. Prehistoric native cultures in the American Southwest were heavily influenced by monumental civilizations from Mesoamerica. As archaeology observes the early Basketmaker II period, we see a growing desire of maize by ancestral Puebloan people. Although maize was not depended on until AD 500, cultivation did occur, and people slowly made the transitional process of becoming a sedentary society. The population of Basketmaker people were not tied to a specific group. Rather, this group could be reflective of an agricultural migratory people from the South who influenced and reshaped local archaic populations in the American Southwest. The blending of these cultural groups eventually created monumental cities such as Mesa Verde, Chaco Canyon, and thousands of other sites across the landscape. Basketmaker II period technologies recovered from rock shelters and pit houses continue to amaze archaeologists. The Basketmaker Atlatls that have been recovered show a high level and degree of skill in the crafting process. One of the finest Atlatls recovered is known as the Broken Roof Cave example. This Atlatl is very thin, has banner stones carefully placed, and incorporated an understanding of physics throughout its structure. When prehistoric people in the Southwest became fully sedentary and dependent on maize, hunting technology shifted towards the bow and arrow system. While this new technology was more practical and desired, we know the Atlatl and dart system was still used in late periods of time. At multiple late period sites located in Agua Fria National Monument, the appearance of small projectile points coexist with larger sized points. This occurrence suggests some individuals preferred the bow and arrow, as others were loyal to previous technology, such as the Atlatl and dart system. Now, while this prehistoric technology does indeed have a rich history, it's important to understand that it didn't just die and dwindle off through time and space. In fact, many traditional societies and cultural groups here in the American Southwest and throughout Mexico still do replicate what their early ancestors invented. They still hunt with these tools, often paying tribute to them. In this video, I want to take you step by step in the recreation and production of the Basketmaker style Atlatl using localized materials. So here is my Atlatl blank. You can see it's just a small diameter piece of Gambel's oak. And I gathered it, of course, from this localized environment in the higher elevations. And that's most likely what the prehistoric inhabitants would look for as well. Some of these harder, more denser woods like oak, scrub oak, Gambel's oak, as well as ash would be most desired. So when I'm looking for the perfect Atlatl blank, I'm looking for something that has straight grain from tip to tip. And that's pretty much universal with any hunting tool, whether it's an Atlatl and dart system, a rabbit stick, or a bow and arrow system, especially the bow, because the bow, if it is twisted or that grain runs off, it will end up collapsing and breaking. So with an Atlatl or a rabbit stick, you want to make sure that it's running straight as well, because with the heat and the humidity and the temperature fluctuations in this environment, it could end up twisting as time goes. So if I had a piece that was twisted, I would end up taking that twist out with dry heat. But luckily, as I cut into the bark, past the cambium layer and into the core, or reaching the core, I can see that that grain is parallel from tip to tip. Further testing it, you can actually cut into the wood like I've done here. And upon further investigation, it is definitely straight. So this is a really nice blank. And what I'm going to do right now is cut into this using a hatchet, a small hatchet, as well as a thin knife to start flattening this into a board. So we'll start shaping this Atlatl out. We'll start that process right now. So I had to get back into this wash cut. It's quite breezy today. Hopefully that doesn't affect the audio. But nonetheless, when I look at this atlatl, everything from last night, like I said, is looking great. But upon further examination, what I'm seeing is this area in here from about the center point into the handle is a little bit thinner. I'm actually under 1/4 inch, whereas towards this end where the spur will rest, and as it starts bending up, this is over 1/4 inch, just slightly over 1/4 inch. So I need to start removing wood on this area here, and I also need to be mindful of these knots. So I have one knot on this edge, and then on the opposite end I have another knot. This one won't be too bad, but I do want to try to attempt to get underneath this one. And as I start to get underneath it, it's really going to start flexing. So yeah, we will continue at it. And like I said, I'm going to start removing material on this spurred end. We'll get this nice and even. Now it's time for me to make the spur. This is quite simplistic, so I find about 1.25 inches from this tip, and I trace a line. Then I trace right in the center of this atlatl, and that's where the tip of the spur will rest. So then this is the tip of the spur, and again, this is where the atlatl dart, the end of the dart towards the fletched end, will hook into the atlatl as I launch the dart into the air and at the target. So this is my spur. You can see it runs right in the center of the atlatl, tracing to the point, and then I'm going to dish this area out. So I'm creating a bowl right in here, and it'll come in about right there. So that's easy and simplistic, and I trace that line to make sure the end of that dish runs center, and that's all that's to it. So at this point, we'll start removing the material inside of this bowl and create our spur using various tools. So to get this started, I just use a metal chisel to gouge this area and create a dish. And I first start with the dish, and then I'll work my way up to the spur. So where I'm at with this atlatl is I have it thinned, it's flexing, I have the spur carved out, and then it's also polished and smoothed. Everything is looking really good. At this point, I'm going to transition forward in the most challenging aspect of creating the prehistoric Basketmaker style atlatl, and that is firmly attaching a rigid finger loop. So you can see in this completed example, I have these finger loops that are attached, and you can use various materials with the finger loop itself. Traditionally speaking, prehistoric peoples of the Southwest, especially in northern Arizona and through New Mexico, would use rawhide, thin strips of rawhide. You can also use brain tan or commercial tan, once again, as long as this finger loop is nice and rigid, nice and secured to the atlatl itself, which in this case, it most definitely is. Okay, so it's been a few days since I made these finger loops. You can see how they turned out. I have a nice rigid and secured finger loop, and they fit my fingers perfect for the style of throwing that I prefer. This is definitely by far the most challenging aspect, as I mentioned, of the Basketmaker prehistoric style Atlatl. Once you get done with this, it's a lot of time, you know, like any primitive skill. It's time consuming. You have to work slow and be patient with the process, but everything else is pretty much a breeze. Now I am going to move forward in the most important aspect of recreating the Basketmaker style Atlatl, and that is attaching a weight to this system. It's really important with the Basketmaker Atlatl because it's so thin and it's flexible. You want to make sure that these darts are in perfect balance with the Atlatl itself. Right now it's far too light and it's out of balance to throw it as it is. So I need to balance this by creating a weight. And I'm using my favorite stone, and that is beautiful red argillite, blood red argillite from our local quarry. Not only did prehistoric people in the Southwest heavily use this for jewelry items, but locally we do find in the archaeological record, in pretty rare examples, that the Prescott people, prehistoric Prescott culture, use this during the Chino phase of occupation for Atlatl weights. So I'm going to follow in their footsteps and recreate a very similar style weight that we find. And I'll take you through that process right now. We are going to grind this soft soap-like stone on sandstone and just slowly work at it to get the shape that's desired. Okay, so now I have the Atlatl weight made and completed. It is now time to find the balancing point where this dart will sit nice and level with the Atlatl. So when I throw this dart into the target, I want it to hit straight into the target, just like you see here. As it sits right now, it's top heavy, so it tends to hit at an angle. I don't want it top heavy, and I don't want it back heavy towards a spur where it then hits up. So I want to find that perfect balance point. Now, early archaeologists would look at these weights and conclude that they were simple fetishes on the Atlatl shaft. Since then, that has completely changed. The narrative has completely changed due to the hard work and research from Justin Garnett, who has spent a long time researching the functionality and perfecting the prehistoric Basketmaker style Atlatl. So on this Atlatl and dart, you can see that I have 3 strips of leather that are attached holding this Atlatl system, or this Atlatl dart, to the Atlatl itself. I have one by the finger loops, one in the center, and then one at the spurred end. As it sits right now, if I grab this leather, you can see it's top heavy. So I know that that dart is going to hit the object like so. If I attach it too far back, that becomes back heavy, and it'll end up hitting like this. So somewhere in the center is going to be my balancing point to where I can hold this strip of leather and it sits completely level, just like I have it here. So this truly does become a matter of just adjusting up and down where that weight should sit for a perfect balancing point. And I'm going to do that right now. Still top heavy, so it needs to go up. And this becomes my balancing point. A little bit breezy outside, but that looks pretty good. This is where I'll attach the weight. Once the weight is attached to the Atlatl, the sinew is allowed 24 hours to completely dry. The end result is a thin and flexible Atlatl, which comes into perfect balance with 2 5-foot darts made of wild rosewood.